I want to bring up to the stage the panelist and moderator for our next session. And this session brings together some of the most interesting minds working in gamification. I frequently point out that there are very few practitioners who are really qualified to say that they're experts at building gamified systems. And this panel is just chock-a-block with them. It's moderated, they'll end up introducing themselves, or Tim will introduce them, but it's moderated by a tremendous friend of the conference, a member of the conference content committee, Tim Chang. Tim is a partner at Norwest Venture Partners, also an awesome musician, by the way, if you haven't listened to Tim's band Black Mahal, right? Black Mahal. They actually are really good, by the way. I'm not just plugging them because Tim is a friend of mine. They really are good, Black Mahal. So Tim is a partner at Norwest Ventures. He has led the charge on a number of both investments, obviously, in the game space, but also intellectual and thought leadership in games and gamification. One of the most eloquent, interesting venture capitalists and folks in the startup ecosystem. So thanks very much. Welcome, Tim.
No, come on up. Take a seat. Good afternoon, folks. I'm Tim Chang with Norwest Venture Partners. Gabe, thanks for that generous intro. What I really do is I speak on panels and host dinners and occasionally do some deals in this space as a VC. But I've been a lifelong gamer, and I started programming games in 1980 on Apple II. And maybe because of that, I always viewed the world in terms of game lenses, probably to an extreme where somebody's laughing at me because me and my wife came up with Spouseville, and it's the way we kind of manage our honey-do list to each other. Works really well, actually. And then I'm sure someday when I'm a parent, I'll be doing Kidville as well. But sometimes I even have strange thoughts of like, hey, if you were a real-life RPG, how would you design your level-up strategy over time? What would life as an RPG look like? And it's actually kind of interesting. It's a little exercise I would encourage everybody to try someday. But with that, I want to introduce our panelists here, or actually let them introduce themselves and talk about what they're working on and their incredible backgrounds in this space. I think we're very lucky to have some of the top minds in gamification today. And I'm going to start with Amy Jo Kim.
Oh. There we go.
We're going to have to play past the mic there.
Left to right.
Hi, I'm Amy Jo Kim, and I've been doing a mixture of web design, social design, and game design for a long time. I worked on games as a designer like Ultima Online and Rock Band and The Sims, There.com, also websites like Family.com, eBay. And I'm currently doing a lot of client work with companies figuring how to be smart and thoughtful about making their experiences more gameful or game-like. And I'm also teaching the workshop tomorrow, and hello to those of you who'll be attending.
Great.
So hi, I'm Sebastian Deterding. I'm a user experience designer. I have been working a lot with news sites and civic education in the past, and I'm currently doing my PhD research actually on the motivational psychology of gamification, and I occasionally voice my discontents with some of the discourse, which I believe got me up here.
Josh Kramer, after almost 10 years in the casual game space, launched a company called Leapfrog Builders, and we work with media companies on audience engagement and retailers on customer loyalty, and we treat that holistically. Gamification is obviously a way to articulate many of the things that we do.
Nicole Lazzaro. I'm the head of Zio Design, and for the past 20 years I've been making software experiences more engaging, both for corporations such as Cisco, Roxio, and Oracle, as well as EA, Sega, Ubisoft. We've worked also on The Sims as well as 3 in the Mist series. And what we do is, what I did is sort of crack the code between how game mechanics create the emotions that create the engagement. It's called the 4 Keys to Fun. And I also did the first game on the iPhone to use the accelerometer, a game called Tilt Flips Adventure in 1.5 dimensions with Joe Hewitt at iPhone Dev Camp. So we've got a new version on the iPad and a new version on the iPhone coming soon.
Hi, I'm Kes Sampanthar. I'm the Director of Media Strategy at Synergy. I also run the Innovation Lab there. I've been in sort of game design or gamification space since my research in artificial intelligence. And over the last 10 years, I've been trying to bring in different ideas from neuroscience, behavioral economics, and social media theory into creating what we call motivational design, which is taking sort of the ideas of games, but really focusing on human motivations. And we've been working with also like eBay, and most interesting, we've been starting working with the back offices and the large enterprise companies to actually show how you can actually put a gaming layer, as it were, on the front of work. So.
Good, guys. We have relatively short time periods, so we're going to try to bullet through a lot of these questions quickly, maybe take 2 or 3 comments on each. First one. So, gamification, big buzzword of 2011 already, probably the fault of many of us on the panel for bandying the term about it, GDC and other places. But it's already entering this phase of questioning and backlash and people saying, this is BS and what is this stuff? I'm kind of curious, have you encountered similar sentiments and why do you think people might be reacting this way?
So going into media company conference rooms, there's plenty of friction, no matter what the topic. But plenty of people talking about gamification and what does that really mean? We've been doing this stuff for 15 years, and the answer is yes, we have, and that's okay. There's a new buzzword out there, and let's just figure out what falls in that bucket and what doesn't. But it doesn't really matter. Let's pull it back to the metrics, and let's pull it back to the user experiences we're designing. Right? Motivational design. I like that phrase. And everybody kind of chills out and calms down and rolls up our sleeves, and we get back to the topic at hand. But definitely, there is some rolling of eyes and those sentiments, in the course of a sales process and then even throughout the project.
So yeah, there's a lot of polarization. If you look at the Twitter feed for GSummit, you'll see that polarization in action. I think part of it is because several different worlds are being brought together with different values and expectations, one of which is the world of loyalty programs. And loyalty programs are great. And many people look at gamification as loyalty programs on steroids. I can, make my loyalty program more fun, more engaging, more effective. There's all these techniques. And you can't, that's fine, you can do that. But that's not game design. And then there's game designers like myself and some other folks who come at it from experience design, crafting an experience that unfolds over time. And I think that people have very different goals for their work. Jane talked eloquently about her goals for her work. And we all in this room have different goals. So I think part of what's happening is this word is a touchstone for different kinds of goals. And the more that we tease that out and get very specific about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and don't oversell something like game mechanics, which are quickly becoming a commodity. It's not about the game mechanics. It's about the experience. I think that the word will not only, I think the divisions will not only die down, but I think the word gamification will go away. We don't look at Amazon and say, Amazon's an AI company. They have tons of AI in their back-end algorithms. I think it will become, these techniques will become part of everything, but it will just become part of our toolkit of designing great experiences.
Just building on that, I think it very much depends which community you shout into. If you shout into the marketing community, you get loyalty. If you shout into the UX community, you get behavioral economics and persuasive technology. If you shout into the venture community, you get Foursquare and Zynga. And if you shout into the game design community, they say, well, this is not a game, because as Jane just said, it's about game design is about creating a rule system that creates interesting challenges for you to solve. And so what the game designers say, rightfully, what you're doing at this point right now is just creating feedback systems and giving the user feedback for doing something. And that is not rule design, which we understand as game design. But I think where the conversation is converging to acknowledge, well, what we're trying to do here is not to build actual games in the first place, but to take some lessons learned there into other spaces. And if we agree that we don't sort of measure up gamified services to full-fledged games, I think then pretty much the uproar silences down.
That's a good point. I think, it's very similar. 2-3 years ago, people said, social media, it's a fad. What is this social stuff? Now it's basically required functionality for any service, site, or product, right? So I think pretty soon, there will be no debate about gamification, and we probably won't even have summits about it. It'll just be kind of obvious on what we do. To that, for now, though, every business, every startup, every entrepreneur I meet, they stick game mechanics into their business model slide as a prerequisite and sort of bullet point, jumping on the bandwagon. I am curious, though, for you guys, who do you see leveraging gamification in intelligent ways today, and how are you leveraging gamification with your own clients and partners, looking for well thought out examples, good implementations?
So, interesting thing, I mean, we've talking a lot about it today, is this idea of badges and feedback, as Sebastian just said. So we see a lot of people jumping on this. Foursquare becoming successful through badges wasn't so much the badges, it provided a social currency to talk about things. It was about the fact that early adopters are explorers. It really was about the users and understanding them. So when we start using gamification correctly, or what we're calling motivational design, it's really understanding that users' personas actually span a far larger breadth than just what we've been thinking about as games. I mean, the interesting thing also from the gaming conversation, what games, AAA games to what we're doing in enterprise space, say, is the fact that, gamers have very specific personas, really, and trying to design systems for them is very different to designing something which has to go to the broader public. Cityville approached 100 million monthly active users as opposed to Halo, which probably only had about 20 million across a franchise. So we're looking at a different demographic who are playing games and engaging for very different reasons. So when we see gamification done correctly, we're really seeing that it's around the users, understanding them, and using the right things which speaks to them and it's about them. It's all about me, as I always used to say when I talk about social media. It's about, what can I say to other people about myself?
Yeah, I think that I'd like to follow up on that. It definitely is about the player, and I think that the systems that I see working in the marketplace now that are using game mechanics in new ways are ones that really recognize that. Points and badges themselves, if you just add them onto a site, is not going to get you Farmville-like results. It's and I'm sorry if I'm blowing anybody's bubble there, but bursting it. But essentially, it's the emergent property from the goals, the obstacles, and the rule set, that emergent quality, that's what creates a good game experience. That's what creates the experience that keeps people coming back. It's not just that I've got a number and it just went up. And if you don't have an emergent behavior, you really don't have a game. So in this case, I think like Groupon, for example, where you've got is a nice example of game mechanics applied pretty well. I think, of course, the game Farmville is good in a sense in that they really revolutionized what happens if you click their ad. A lot of their growth is that ad that goes into the friend feed, the Farmville ad, the lonely cow, or the whatever. They actually meant that click means something. So if you're looking in the space, really look at there's 5 to maybe 24 different social interaction lines of social interaction that they've capitalized, incorporated in worked into their game mechanics. And I think that the Prius has the great Leaf game, right, for eco themes, right? So that changes behavior. That's the emergent design. And we've got our game Tilt, and we're, in players, the tilt points that you earn are all geocoded, and you can then donate them to different secret missions around the world that will make real-world change. So these kinds of properties, it's basically that emergent quality that really makes good games.
So 2 of my favorite examples are Quora and ModCloth. How many of you have ever used ModCloth or seen it? Okay, a few. The ladies, yeah, let's hear it for the ladies and some guys. So ModCloth is a shopping and lifestyle site for young 20-somethings. It's kind of like Cosmo Girl for 2011, and it's quite successful, growing. They've got a system called Be the Buyer. And so to me, what makes a really interesting game and a strong foundation for gamification is a core system you can get better at. And go look at ModCloth's Be the Buyer system if you want to see something really smart. What they do is they take all the samples that the core buyer of ModCloth, who buys and orders samples of a very specific style for ladies, young ladies, they take all the samples that she thought were cute but didn't order because she didn't know if she could sell enough of them and put them in a section called Be the Buyer. Everybody on the site votes on them, says what they like about them, review them, and if enough people like it, ModCloth has it manufactured exclusively for their audience. That's crowdsourcing, and I think it's brilliant. I also think Quora is really interesting. Quora didn't clutter up their interface with badges and points. They were very smart. What they did was they created a beautiful design, and then the thing that's really interesting is when you ask a question, they like Jane talked about, they give you hurdles to jump over, but they're integral to the experience. that Quora teaches you how to ask a really good question through the process of asking a question. Brilliant onboarding. And it is part of why the quality is so high. So I think those kind of systems are the thing we're going to see more and more of.
That's interesting.
I'd like to highlight one more word that Nicole just used, which was the word meaning. I think everything that manages to create something that is meaningful or interesting to the user. And some things that I see there is Health Month as a health application, because it actually uses the user goals that he brings to it, like I want to lose weight or I want to do that, and says, okay, these are the goals that we're now trying to help you achieve, actually. So meaningful goals by the users. BoardGameGeek.com, which is not talked about, which is a community for board game geeks. But the kinds of badges they deal out are custom generated by the community themselves. So if you are able to attain such a badge within a community of other committed fans of that property, that actually communicates something meaningful to the community. If you say, I'm a fan of this and that game, or I actually did this and that. So meaningful community. And finally, meaningful, interesting challenges like which has a beautiful onboarding experience for figuring out your musical taste, in which it produces an actual fun mini-game, right? Can you figure out which music title we're playing to you here, which is a real challenge and which is real fun as a game in and of itself, but then they're sort of stealthily taking the data in your ability to answer or not to answer that to feed their music recommendation system and say, okay, he recognizes these kinds of music titles, so we're going to recommend him this kind of music. So meaningful, interested, goals, community, and challenges.
Good, thank you. Well, let me take the inverse question now and ask, especially for the benefit of our audience members thinking about exploring, gamification in their businesses. What are the most common mistakes you see, or the most shallowly used game mechanics or bad implementations of gamification in this field? Because it's new, people are exploring, and there's probably a lot of common mistakes, which probably leads to some of the backlash against this notion in the first place.
I would say looking at exclusively an achiever model.
Achiever model?
Yep.
So leaderboards are only...
So, right, exactly. Just taking your site, throwing a point system in there, throwing a leaderboard on your site and thinking you're done. Or, using a point system but not thinking about how to balance that point system. Not really leveraging goals as a way to onboard people and actually let people self-select themselves through the funnel. A lot of companies will just completely ignore those very low-hanging fruit, easy gamification concepts where we used to have these funnels and think about how do we push people through these funnels, and now people actually want to be told what to do next. How do we not tell them? So, I've seen that a lot. Right?
Yeah, I'd like to add to the number, going on the numbers theme a little bit. It's also not just points, but also like say the number of followers. The game of Twitter, that number under your photo of how many people follow you, actually then breaks the RSS feed, because the more people you follow, the more noisy that channel becomes. And so if you want to level up in Twitter by raising your score, you actually then break the other side of the game experience, the real experience, which is following people's tweet and finding stuff that's interesting. So you've got whatever kind of behavior you put a number to, you need to be sure that behavior doesn't have unintended consequences. And we actually see this in real life that taken to an extreme, gamification can kill. I was on the Bay Bridge, last Friday, and the game designers that are in charge of the toll plaza have a variable rate, right? To encourage off-peak travel. So basically, your toll goes down if you're traveling off-peak, which is great. It does reduce traffic. But however, don't be on the Bay Bridge at 6:59 p.m. on a Friday night, because literally there was a dozen folks pulled off on the median. People stopped in the middle of the highway, an active lane, looking at the scoreboard. When is it going to go from $6 to $4? So to save $2, they're endangering everybody at the toll plaza. Just absolutely crazy. And then the other thing I would just add is that sites, like overwhelmingoffers.com, I think there's just spraying all kinds of rewards and tweet this, to follow somebody or to get some sort of coupon or to unlock an offer. People are going to get tired of that really quickly, and it doesn't really craft that wonderful game experience. And I love what Amy Jo was saying, something you want to be better at.
Yeah, and just to follow on from that, one of the things which we're really noticing is when we go and talk to companies, they're really focused on what they want the users to do And you have to be very cautious about, making your priorities very different to what the users want. I mean, Nike Plus is a really successful product, not because they're Nike selling shoes, it's about running. You have to really focus on the users, their priorities, their motivations, and integrate your business goals into it. If you're trying to give badges and points for somebody to, like the example we had was a company who wanted to create a social network and give points for 4 friends you invite. So if you're paying points to spam your friends, that just feels wrong. You really have to focus on the users and what they're there for, what they're getting out of it, the meaning for them, as we've been talking about, and actually making sure you're using these design principles to create that first, and then adding this idea of your business goals and integrating it in. And there's very sophisticated techniques to separate out point system and things like that, but that's one of the key mistakes we're seeing a lot of, and something which businesses find it very hard to get their head around.
So balancing business goals and end-user motivations.
Well, I mean, a game mechanic has to do 4 things, the 4 keys to fun. It has to introduce novelty. It has to have some challenge. Most successful experiences, at least nowadays, have a social component, and it has to have meaning or value. And so, business goals, to create a game, you literally need to do a game, G-A-M-E. You need your goals, your business goals. You need to connect those with the actions of the user. You need to then look at their motivations and design your mechanics around that. And then you need to engage the emotions by connecting the actions and the motivations into activity loops, and that's where you get your game. There's more stuff on our website, the Zio Design website, for white papers and stuff you like.
So would you have any tips for, especially members of our audience in non-game industries looking to begin gamification of their businesses in implementations? How do they start? Are there off-the-shelf tools they can use, or should they engage with consultants to help them with these types of experience designs? Is every instantiation going to be a custom project? How do you see sort of the gamification implementation industry playing out?
Some of us are a little biased, but but the interesting thing is, I'd say the platforms are getting better, and it's still a very small community, and so we all try and stay as up to speed on each other's developments as we can. But I think platforms are still at the point where it's an infrastructure, and you can't plug it in and be there. There is an element of some of the vendors are now offering some design services. They used to give those away. Now they're charging for them. I guess some of the newer ones will continue to give it away, and that will sort of drive the ecosystem. But these platforms by themselves are not plug and play. It's not like I can put a follow us link on the website like you can with a Twitter and a Facebook. And develop a fan base that way. It just doesn't work that way. And so there does need to be a design, whether that's from consultants or that's from people you hire internally or the vendor helps you. The other thing to be careful about is make sure you're doing a holistic gamification design and not just focusing on the 5 newest features of a platform that you're leveraging. There are many things you can do without a platform, and honestly, I would say step 1 is just like any other campaign, put together a design document and start from there, and try and identify things you can do to learn about your audience before you start playing with platforms, because that's going to become a huge distraction. And that's, again, agnostic to what resource you use. You just can't plug and play.
You want to go first? Well, just real quickly, I think that what's really fascinating, or what really is really driving me at this point in time, is that we have this wonderful opportunity. In that, I was actually on this very stage a couple months ago at UX Week giving a talk on how do we create game mechanics, and we are, what game mechanics are is they are this next generation of what we mean by interaction design. Games have been around for electronic games have been around for 35 years, and we have in a sense been evolving these wonderful tool set, these wonderful ideas, these concepts. And so it's going to be that we can use to then create more engaging experiences, and by that we mean greater attention and increased motivation. And when we can do that, we can actually paint attention onto a screen like Velcro. And you can actually, using emotions from those actions, you can actually paint it with any color that you choose to match your brand or to match the task at hand. And so I just think of it as, it'll be a combination of, not only consultants, not only, platforms or hardware, or it'll be individual designers. It's going to be this whole new revolution. We went through usability a number of years ago. We're going to do this whole new thing with creating engagement.
Did we solve usability?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, just building on that, the platform is basically the building blocks, but whether out of the building blocks comes a building that is actually interesting to the users or not is all about having a designer. And I wouldn't care about whether it's a game designer or a user experience designer. The important thing there is to have a designer who understands he has to be empathetic with the users, understanding their goal, bringing user research in to understand, well, what kind of community do we have? Are they competitive? Are they collaborative? Something in between? What drives our users actually? What are their motivations and emotions? And then having a design process for which you should allocate time to build it, to play test it, to see whether it's fun or not, to see how the metrics turn out, and then to iterate over that again and again and again, which is the core of any good design process, to prototype and iterate again and again and again. So start now and prototype. Yeah, and to test to see whether it actually turns out right. Sure.
Sorry, I get passionate. You want to feel, you want to basically one-on-one, you want to feel the people using your system. If you get people that are in there and you can feel their emotions, their excitement, their motivation increasing while they're using the system, that's when you know. That's how you're going to find your way through these, past the icebergs.
Great, guys. So I guess a couple things I hear out of that is, one, you really can't bolt this stuff on. It's not a retrofit. It probably has to be designed in. Therefore, even if Salesforce.com or SAP launches a gamification module, it's not as easy as plug and play, and it's probably still very much an evolving art.
It's not plug and play, but you can certainly bolt it on, and there are a lot of things that you can do with existing implementations. People sometimes think, I got to rewrite because I need gamification, and there's so much you can do just as a bolt-on, in my opinion.
Last question really quickly, we're almost out of time here. What initial industries do you think are ripe for best use of gamification first? Do you see initial verticals that are really well suited for this?
So a lot of us here are generally coming here, sort of the retail and the media space seems very obvious, right? To create these engaging experiences, these motivational designs, these gamification for that. One of the things which we're finding is everything from healthcare. I spent the last quarter of last year working with a lot of healthcare companies, doctors, patients, health research, really trying to show how you can create engagement even in the back offices, the environments like that, changing behavior. Then things like enterprise, eco, changing green behavior is a really interesting area for us. But even just, anything from supply chains to logistics, all of these areas, when it's about people and trying to get them to engage in what we call ought-tos and want-tos. We believe if you're looking at what somebody ought to be doing, what they want to be doing, that interaction between those two things creates some powerful ideas for creating motivational design.
I think that we've got a real great opportunity in some in the areas that are already fairly gamified or game-like, such as call centers. You've already got some mechanics to move. You want to be sure, though, that I believe Tim was talking about earlier, is that you don't want to just reward, just have leaderboards, because it's not going to. People will fall out. Not everybody goes for points. Not everybody can be on the top 10. So you want to be sure to have some co-op mechanics. I think education, which hasn't been mentioned much at all at this conference, unfortunately, is a huge thing, because there is no game on this planet that does not teach. So I'm really serious about that. And so the opportunity for us to really, increase motivation both in when you're in your school years or afterwards, as adults, is just amazingly is an amazing opportunity. And then the last thing, I think the last market is life. And I want to echo what Jane was saying earlier, but in the sense that what we really want to do and what my company is doing with Zio Design and Zio Play with our games is that we're really looking at how can game mechanics unlock human potential. How can they reach the emotion and motivational systems so people can unlock their potential and improve quality of life through play? It's not just about opening our wallets. It's all about really becoming, better citizens and just, having more fun, enjoying our friends and enjoying where we're going.
I don't think there's anything you can't gamify. You could gamify doing your taxes. I mean,
That's the original game.
Well, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, Mint's very gamey.
Anyway, but it's funny. I was sitting next to the SVP of R&D for McGraw-Hill on the plane here, and she was talking about how, we're doing gamification, and I think it's evolving, and companies like McGraw-Hill will follow. What they think they're doing in gamification today will ultimately be the gamification we all see as gamification. So we're going in the right direction.
I would actually object and say there are some things which cannot be gamified or which could be gamified, but if in hardcore productivity, coming up with a smart game design to motivate your workers is actually not cost-benefit efficient versus them actually doing the job done, because sort of the amount of delegation and work putting into that before they're doing it. So depending on the scale, that's something where it's just not cost-benefit efficient to do it. And the absolute sweet spot to me is everywhere where the user himself wants to follow a goal, already brings an intention to something like health, like finance, like fitness, like everything. And he just wants you to have your system support them in achieving their own goals, because then they already bring the motivation to it, and you're basically the amplifier to that.
Amy Jo, any final comments there?
Can I steal the mic and just disagree a little bit? I just want to add to what you were saying. It's one of the most fascinating things as a researcher when I've been looking at game experiences for the past 2 decades is that usability, the metric there is ease of use, reducing time on task, making things easy. But what happens if work is easy? You then are no longer, throwing hay bales into the cart, like Abe was saying at the morning's keynote, is that you're actually, if everything's easy, it's just push a button and win. So you lose out on all these wonderful motivating emotions, like the feeling of Fiero, like, yes, I just got the boss monster, yes, I just, so you want to design these systems so that they reward hard work. They enhance that feeling of accomplishment and mastery. That's a very important add to what you're saying.
All set. Good. Gabe, I think we're set. Do you want any Q&A, or should we roll on to the next session? All right, very good. Let's thank our panelists for a great session.